Hello and welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Each week I speak to a photographer about 3 lenses that have meant something to them on their photographic journey. It's unashamedly gear chat, but hopefully focused more on the images made with that gear than performance metrics and graphs. My guest today is Dan Baker. Dan's a UK-based photographer who specialises in photographing the seaside town where he lives, but I think specialises is maybe underselling how specialist. He set himself the challenge a few years back of shooting a single stretch of beachfront, about 100 metres in his hometown, and this hyper-specific focus has produced beautiful, rich colour imagery that's playful and detailed, and just it's incredible to look at. I love his work, and I loved having this conversation with him about 3 very similar lenses, but then that's very Dan, finding the variety and what's special in an area that most photographers would feel like they could exhaust in an afternoon. Here's my conversation with Dan. It was the first thing with the watches. I had an Android watch to start with, and then I had an Apple Watch, and it was the most useful thing that they could do for you was to ping you 10 minutes before you were supposed to be somewhere else. So that you could kind of, if you were going from meeting to meeting, like this is pre-Rona, right? When like I used to go into a place and actually be around other people and have to physically move from one place to another. Like now leaving one meeting involves just doing an embarrassing kind of like game show wave, you know?
I know, it's weird. And the same people are in the same meeting. You're like, oh,
yeah,
bye, guys. Oh, it's the same people, just a few different faces.
I have a couple on a Tuesday and a Thursday that are for the same partner, but different projects back to back. And it is just like 80% of the call join again on a different link.
It's a pain in the ass, isn't it? It is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's weird as well, the whole like thing. It's a super weird sort of setup of everything. I'm not ignoring you, by the way. I'm turning lights on and stuff. So obviously I'm super organised.
No, this is great. I love it.
Let's have a look what we got.
It's like being in the green room beforehand, you know?
There we go. Look at
Oh,
that's
lights.
Yeah. I've got a I was going to pay for it. You know well, I've got one actually. I've got a light that actually sits above my monitor for editing. Yeah. I was using that, and then I was like, it's not quite bright. I need something brighter. And I've got a new. I've turned my laptop around. It won't. I've got it plugged in. Studio display. So I've got that.
Yes.
And I was like, I need a brighter light. So I've ended up clipping a Philips Hue bulb to the back of the monitor. It's a proper like tape it kind of round job.
Right. Yep.
It's shitty rigs. It's major shitty rigs on the back of this. And now I've got a bulb, and it looks beautiful. It looks like the back of the monitor. And every time I move it, 'cause it's clipped on, it doesn't matter where it's facing. It works.
Ah, nice. Yeah. So that's cool. Hey, look, if it works, right? There is a lot to be said for it just works.
It just works, and I can ask the computer.
Yes. You don't say announce. You don't invoke a voice assistant, especially on a podcast, in case people are driving, or and then suddenly, hey, dingus.
Although ours at the moment seems to be playing up massively. It is literally doing its own thing. I think AI is taking over.
I think what we're learning about AI though is that it's not very good. Like, unfortunately, like it's not quite there yet. And we made a bit of a jump, and we all got a bit excited, and then it was like, hang on a minute. It is just still fundamentally guessing the next word.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is that's what a lot of these things do. Like it's not. It's funny. It's linguistics. They were talking about this on The Verge recently, and it's linguistic in it's linguistic capability, but not intelligence. That's the thing. Is it can't. And there was a really good podcast I was listening to called Hard Fork. So Casey Newton, who used to be at The Verge, does this New York Times podcast called Hard Fork. And his co-host, whose name I forget because I've only just started listening to the show, did this thing with AI friends where you can kind of use apps to kind of create personas that you can have conversations with. And they remember conversations you've had, and you can have like a real chat with them. And it was interesting. Like they're very sophisticated in a bunch of ways. Like and the text to speech kind of sounds increasingly like a person. In a way that's like it's very convincing, but it fundamentally still can't do a lot of things. Like they were talking about like use cases for it, and right now you could see it being a good therapist, for example, because you need someone who's going to be upbeat, mirror you, get you to reflect on the things that you've said out loud. There's things like that, or maybe some coaching aspects of like some very, very low level, basic, not tailored to you necessarily stuff that it could probably do. The guy used it before he went out on stage to talk,
Yeah.
and he was nervous. And the thing just said, just remember, you've done this loads of times before, and everyone in that room wants you to succeed. And it just said the things that a friend would say to you. And he was like, that's oddly soothing and helpful in that moment. But it's not, it will also say stuff like, we should go for a walk together and discuss this. And it's like, well, you can't, man. You're a piece of software. Like, like it's not really aware of its own limitations. And I don't think I want it to become the movie Her at any point either, Like,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Although I did see a disturbing thing. I watched a video about the fact that they can't stop it from basically deciding that humans are bad and that will solve the problem if they just kill everybody.
yes.
It keeps coming up with this. And their only fix for this, they can't get it to stop saying this, but the only fix they've got is to basically tell it not to say that out loud. I mean, how insane is that? It's just like, I mean, it's Terminator waiting to happen.
Yeah, but it's also so complex. It's really funny because like they also can't really stop it hallucinating and just making stuff up. So you can tell this thing, like we've only been talking for weeks, but if you ask, like if you had an AI companion or I told my AI friend about Dan and I was like, tell me about Dan, it'll go like, Dan's incredible and his humanitarian efforts at the orphanages when he was growing. And it'll be like, what? And it will just make stuff up. So it's recently Google Gemini. I mean, it's so easy to dunk on these things. Bless them. They're trying really hard to do incredible stuff, and it's just not ready for prime time. Google Gemini last week was telling people to put glue on pizza.
Well, I mean, you could do. You could,
because the cheese slid off. The cheese was sliding off, and they said, "How do I stop the cheese sliding off my pizza?" And it just said, "Yeah, use glue. Use this kind of glue. It's water based." It's like,
I mean,
what?
It's almost like survival of the fittest. If you're dumb enough to do that,
sure,
there
is a Darwinian kind of element to this for sure. But yeah, it does seem a little bit irresponsible.
I mean, there's a dark sense of humor within me that just goes, let's keep that going. Let's see what happens here. Let's watch this unfold.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of like start sort of segue us on nicely, like you could ask it, like, how do I stop my ice cream falling on the ground?
We don't want that. We definitely don't want that.
No, that would be the end of an entire. Do you think you'll ever do a book of the ice creams?
You know what? I actually started putting bits and pieces together. My Lightroom catalog is so like unorganized. But I actually started like dropping ice cream bits and pieces, anything to do with ice creams. I've dropped in a folder, and then I got to a point where I was just like, "There's so much crap. There's a few good ones, but there's so much crap in there that I lost interest on it." And now I'm like, "Oh yeah, I was doing that. I need to keep adding bits, but I've shot that much. Anything that's on the floor, basically, even rubbish now. I photograph rubbish on the floor, so
yeah." Well, you posted your first set of pictures, I think, didn't you, for like the summer? You posted like, this is summer 24, like it starts here, like a first little collection of images today. I saw you post something on Instagram.
Yeah, so I tend to do that like every year. But I just don't advertise it. I start a new catalog basically as a live site type of thing, and it's almost like a working gallery space, so I can just evolve as time goes on. And chances are, by the end of summer, none of the images that I posted today will still be like live.
Right.
They'll have like gone, and they'll be replaced by, hopefully, fingers crossed, better ones. So that's the idea. But it just sort of spurs me on because then I can see it basically anywhere. I can just look on a laptop or if I'm on my phone or wherever. Or if someone goes, "Oh, what are you working on at the moment?" Here it is. It's live. I mean, it's kind of bad because it sort of shows the working out, and it should be this polished thing. But I'm a bit like, it doesn't matter. It'd be fine.
Yeah, no, I love that.
There, and then there's loose stuff.
I think it's really nice to kind of show the work in progress. I just read the Joel Meyerowitz book on A Question of Color, I think it's called, about when he was choosing whether or not to go black and white or color for his photography. Because I feel it's funny, he's quite a good photographer to be talking about, like, given that A, you shoot so much vibrant, amazing color, and B, we're going to talk about a lot of 35mm lenses. He's quite a good person to have in there. But the book is great because he tried for a while to take the same photos side by side in black and white and color to kind of see how he felt about it, because it had a feel, and it's a great book to read. It's like really, I was going down a bit of a black and white rabbit hole, and it's really changed my perspective. Like I read that on a flight going down to London and was just like, no, this is I'm missing something. I'm missing a trick. And so that's maybe a good one to look at, because that shows the working out, right? Which I think we should see more of. I think this idea of like it's all got to be perfect and polished, and it kind of chimes with my favorite thing of like Instagram makes you think it should be your job, and it's not my job, right? It is yours, and you're working and doing stuff, right? But like most of us are happy amateurs, so there should be spaces for working out. So is it like do you have a thought then before you start the new year? Like do you think about like, I want to do this year and I want to do that, and do you have like, is it like a time of year when the light comes good for you, because you've got such a focused area of work?
Yeah, I do. I start like every year. I'm going to do this. Like for the last couple of years, I'm going to be shooting portraits. That's my goal. I'm going to shoot portraits, and then summer comes around, and I'm like, right, I'm set on what I'm going to do. I want to shoot this, and then I just freestyle. Right. I can't help myself. It's like a default setting. I can't break away from what I want to shoot, and I don't want to deny myself that. I just want to go out and shoot. So if I'm having fun, and that is what I do. I just go down there. And I was supposed to have packed this up like 7 or 8 years ago. This was supposed to have been like a project, and then it was finished and then done, and a book, and then move on. And I did that, and then I got to the point where I was like, I'm still shooting. And it's just gone on and on and on. So I think at some point there's going to have to be like a 10-year. And then after that, I do think I need to do something else. Or maybe I'll carry on shooting the seaside, but that'll maybe be like more hidden, and there'll be something else happening. I don't know. But I say this now, and then I know what I'll do. I'll just continue shooting.
Yeah. So, but I that's great. I think the no rules approach is pretty good, because like you came about the 100-meter stretch like out of necessity, wasn't it? It was a sort of like you wanted something to focus on. You just went, yep, it's that stretch. How long ago was that now?
That's like 7, 8 years ago.
7 years.
Yeah, it's quite a while.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Well, but that's because that was all I had. There was nothing else there.
Yes.
It was just like that was one end, and that was the other, and that was the cut off, and there's stuff after that, but it doesn't interest me. There's like this solid chunk in the middle where it interests me, and there's stuff happening, and there's a couple of bottlenecks where everything seems to occur around that. So like a lot of dropped ice creams around them, a lot of people banging into each other. So that basically that little area.
And had you settled on 35 as your kind of like focal length? Because you'd done some training, like you've been taught photography, right? A lot of people I talked to kind of picked up a camera and sort of have found their way. But you studied, didn't you? And like got taught how to use a dark room, and things like that.
Yeah, so I did my. By the way, we started.
Yeah, this is the thing. The show is the show. Thing? Yeah, this is how I do it.
I don't know if it was actually starting or if it was.
No, sorry. No context. I do it like Mark Maron. Yeah, I just start going because I feel like it's more natural. Depending on how much fun we have, I may or may not include that bit, for example, where you go, because I could see it on your face. You were looking a little bit confused, but you were just going to go with it. And then there just came a point where you were like, no, I'm just going to check. I'm just going to check whether we've started. I just kind of record it all. Do you need to put your phone voice on?
And then this is me being serious now.
Yes, absolutely. Art. Crazy. Was Sean more organised? Is that what this is about? Like Sean sat you down and was like, right, we're going to do this now. I'm not stacking up well, is what I'm hearing.
That bar has been set, and now we've lowered the bar. No, I'm joking. This is fun. I like this. I'm all for like take the rules out, throw them out the window.
Yeah, this is looser on purpose. It's the same reason that I'm not looking at the stats for it, because I had like week 1 was like 500 listeners or something, and I thought that was a brilliant week 1, and I'm never going to look again unless I absolutely have to, because what number would be enough? Like how many, like how many is enough? Like just don't look at the stats, right? Like do the newsletter, do the thing, and just that way you can just enjoy making it, and then you can just make it for like, if I just make it for a small audience of people who listen to it, who cares? Like that's the fun of it. Yes. But yeah, I will take your feedback on board about like, just so you know, the show is the show. Like,
I
what
mean,
happens
I
happens.
like it. I feel like I've just ruined it a bit because I've lifted the curtain slightly and gone, "Oh, what's going on here?"
We can choose how much curtain lifting we include. That's the
Ah,
great thing about it. There's no rules. So before you started, you know, there's a young Dan. He's arrived at the seafront. He's got his 100-meter stretch. He's not even seen a dropped ice cream yet. Had you at that point settled on 35 because of your education and training? Had you arrived with that, or were you exploring that?
so I was shooting. I think 35 is my sort of focal length, and it was where I started. So on a rangefinder, when I first got my M6, I had a
Mm.
35 Voigtlander
Mm.
color scoper, I think it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had that on, and I had that on for years. It was pretty much the only lens I had, and I had it welded to the front of the M6.
Mm.
So that was how I saw everything, and I like the frame lines of the 35.
Yeah.
I think you've had like basically the same story, haven't you? That's how you
Yeah.
see a photograph. So that's how I see
35.
a photograph as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
35 mil. I mean, I like a 50. I like that little bit of compression with stuff, but to
Hmm.
shoot on a rangefinder with a 50 mil is a pain in the ass. I find anyway, it's far too restrictive for me. I like something wider.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, 35 was like the lens that I was going to be shooting with. So
Mm.
it wasn't really even a question. It was just I pick up my camera, the lens is already on there. All I need to
Yeah.
figure out is what's in front of the lens, what I'm
Yeah.
going to photograph. That's the hardest part, and that was the part I found like after stumbling around for probably 15 years of trying to make pictures of
Yeah.
absolutely nothing and worrying about all the stuff that you constantly do worry about. Like, oh, have I got the right lens? Have I got the right thing? Where am I going to be? And like, no, I just need to go out and shoot. And then when I started doing that, I was like, oh, this is starting to fall into place for me because I've eliminated all the other distractions. I just need to find
Yeah.
out what I'm actually interested in and then shoot
Yeah.
that. And the actual backside of that, as in a camera and a lens and everything else, those choices are already made. I know what I
Yeah.
like. I know what I
Yeah.
like or how I like to shoot. I just need to go and shoot it.
Yeah.
So and that's the
Yeah.
often, that's the thing we often like forget. But it's that thing that's in front of the camera that's a lot more important than. I mean, yeah, you
Oh,
do
yeah.
need the right tools,
Mm.
and they do have a particular voice and everything else. And if you approach them with like a medium format or a large format camera, that's going to have a particular look to it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you approach it with like a little point and shoot, that's going to have a different feel. But I know what I wanted, and then I
Yes.
just had to go out and shoot. And then I was lucky enough to be able to stumble across the thing that really excites me.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there
Which
you
was
go.
boys dropped by seagulls and ice cream cones and things like that. It's good that you say that because last week was away on a trip with Alice and fully adopted. It was funny after I talked to Matthias Berling, who does a channel on YouTube as well. I talked to him just before I went away, and he's fully on the zone focusing, like F8 and be there, kind
Mm,
of take. And again, for the same reasons as you're discussing, of you can then focus on making the thing you wanted to make rather than futzing around and like lens paralysis and like
yeah,
have I got the right thing. And there was also funny thing that Vieren said on the last episode that just went out about how you can, if you start wide, you can crop in. So you
yeah,
can kind of, if you haven't got the stuff there, you can't, like, if you start at 50, you've got far less latitude. Chances are you were focused in a lot closer on things. Whereas you just, especially these days with like you've got an M11, like
mm.
that's an insane amount of resolution. You can actually get away with murder and do all sorts of kind of like stuff. Do you find that you do that, or do you find that you're kind of like so set on your focal length now that it just
I'm
works?
I'm pretty set, and
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm a purist, but there's part of me that is a little bit of a
Mm.
purist, and like
Yeah.
I try not to crop. I mean, obviously, if it needs it, I'll crop, but sometimes the edges of frames, where like there's a hand in it or something like that,
Mm. Mm.
and I've tried things where I've cropped things out in the past, and it's got to be level and straight and everything else, and
Mm.
everything becomes so tight that it loses that certain, like, that substance that makes it exciting, that spur
Yeah.
of the moment thing where things are a little bit chaotic. And you
Yeah.
take all that out of it, you edit all of that out of it by cropping and forcing the frame to be exactly what it should be. And it just loses the excitement for me. So I've
Yeah.
got to the point now where I'm like, I saw it like that. That's how I saw it. That's why I snapped. And a lot of the time I'm shooting, there's two styles. There's the quick off the cuff kind of, that's happening right in front of me, react to it and shoot it. And that's the ones where I'll tend to leave a wonky horizon or a hand or an arm or a leg sort of sticking out the frame. And often that communicates with whatever's in the frame as well, because I mean, there was a photograph I took a few weeks back in Skegness where there's a guy just laid straight out across a beach, and there's some more legs pointing out of the beach and out of the frame, sorry. And that was part of it. And if I crop that out, it loses a little bit. There's that conversation between two sets of legs that are intersect, and it's all this kind of thing. So I think it's important to look at the frame and see how it feels to you, rather than approaching it strictly from like a pragmatic point of view. Like, why does it have to be exact? We're not making movies here, are we? We're not Hollywood.
No.
We're trying to do something that's got a little bit more freedom to it. Or I think I try to anyway. But then I contradict that with the other stuff, because sometimes I like to be exactly perfectly composed. And sometimes that is with a slight angle, but still everything is within its place. And I've spent time carefully figuring out what the composition needs to be and where people need to fall into the frame. But then some of the best frames that I've made like that have been where there's been someone that's just walked into a random bit in a bit of the frame, which I would have gone, I don't want anyone there. But now they're there, that oddly balances. There's something that you go, that feels nice, I need to shoot that. And then that becomes the winning frame. It was just the unexpected one.
Yeah, I feel like in the modern era we miss out a little bit. Like, I've got the Magnum book, we've talked about it before, you know, of the contact sheets, and it would be fun to still have contact sheets to go through somehow, and to kind of like have that arrangement and a way of kind of scribbling. Like, you know, iPads exist. Surely there's a way we could bring this back, you know, where I could show you like, this was my thought process, and these are the 5, and it was this one for this reason, and you know, it'd be fun to look at.
I still do that. I do it for work. I make contact sheets for work. It's digital, and obviously it loses a little bit with it. But I make digital contact sheets, and I do, again, going back to the purist thing. They've got black backgrounds to them. They've got the text underneath. They've got I've got like edging around them, so it's got a little bit of a kind of nod to an old school film contact sheet that you would do in the darkroom.
That's nice.
And because you see other ones, and it's all very digital and flat, and just a white page with just blocks of pictures on it. It just feels like it's come out of a printer, where I wanted mine to feel like it came out of a chemical bath. I know it hasn't, but you know, there's still a nod to it. So and it's nice to be able to do that as well, because you can see the working, you can see how you've got to a certain frame through doing that. And maybe that's something actually I need to share more often, like not just from like obviously work perspective, but maybe like personal stuff, because it might not be a bad idea for me to do it for myself, you know, as a like a reflective kind of thing.
Yeah, the thing it's making me think just now is I don't know what your process is like when you get the images back into Lightroom or something, but I tend to delete quite quickly and quite freely, because I made so many frames, although I, you know, quite often don't make lots of frames of the same location. I could probably work something a bit more. Something a guy called Dan advised me to do once, in fact. But I think it would be maybe good to kind of live with the images a little bit longer and come back to them, because that's the other aspect that as I take more photos, that I kind of really think I need. And that's where your kind of posting your work in progress is such a good idea, I think, because it's oftentimes I like something in the moment, and then I'll come back to it weeks later, and I'll go, there's nothing there. Like, I can see what I was holding on to. I was holding on to the idea of something, or maybe I pressed the shutter like just a moment too late and didn't quite come off, but I desperately want it to be something it isn't. And then it's only with a bit of space that you kind of can kill your darlings like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done the same. I go through my work, and there'll be bits that, but in two ways. There'll be the first time where you go through and think everything's amazing because it's so fresh, and you put so much effort into composing some of the frames, and you feel like they're keepers, and you'll pass over some of the other ones. Then maybe a few months pass, and I often go back through winter and revisit what I've shot during the summer, and then there'll be frames I've gone, how have I passed this over? This is exciting for me to look at again. And there's particular frames that got such like gravity to them, and then I'm like, that is the frame. I need to use that one, not the crap that I've basically put forward.
Yeah.
But I think there's that time and separation and distance between making the work and then reflecting on it. I know it changes all the time. I can look at it like the stuff I produced last year and think that was rubbish. And last year did feel like a pretty bad year, photographically speaking. But then I look at the stuff that I produced when I first started photographing the seafront, and I thought like a couple of years after that, it was not the best and I had evolved. And then I look at it now and I go, oh wow, that's kind of interesting. I don't mean it in like a, blowing smoke up myself here, but I've looked at the frames and there's that much disconnect now from when I've shot them that I'm going, oh look at that, and I've forgotten about details within it, and I've forgotten about how I'd compose something, and you almost fall in love with some images that you've made, and it's the same not just for like looking at your own work, but also like other people's work. And I've done it from looking at some books, and I've got some books here behind me of photographers that I bought books probably like 10, 15 years ago because it felt like I needed to get that particular book, and I didn't respect the work in it at the time. And I've flicked through and gone, there's one or two that I like, but I don't get it. And then I've just put them away, and I've come back to them in the last few years and opened the book up and go, wow, what was I missing? There's so much incredible work here. And I'd almost completely written that off. So I think it's like relationships constantly changing and staying ahead of that, and also being aware of it at the same time, that you will change how you feel about images as time passes. I feel like I've just talked a lot there. Verbal diarrhea.
This is great. This is great because I have a note. I've shared this with some people on the previous episode, so apologies to listeners, but I have a note here that says yeah, yep, yeah, no, just so that I remember not to like interrupt too much. so I'm trying to like nod and just be and leave space, because otherwise I'm worried that people, I mean, I'm probably overly sensitive to the sound of my own voice when I'm editing, and going back. But on the subject of things that are kind of like evolve, but also things that stay the same, your 3 lens choices are delicious because you have understood the assignment completely, which is and been playful with it, I think, as well. So we'll let people know up front, they're all 3 35s, which I think is fantastic. Which one would you like to kind of talk about first?
I'm going to go in date order of when I got them. So I'm going to start with, I've got them here lined up.
Oh, brilliant. This is great. I love it.
So the first one is here. It's my 35 Sumalux. And this is the spherical version.
Yeah.
With a little, I don't know if you can be able to hear that.
It does sound good. I do like the sound of a lens. That is good.
Yeah, so that's so this was the first Leica 35mm lens that I saved up and got, and this was quite a few years ago now, and it was a little bit cheaper than what it is now because of inflation and everything else. And this is just one of those lenses that you buy once and you keep. I mean, pretty much all the Leica lenses are really, but this was the first 35 that I bought. And spent some serious money on to be able to get the lens that I was absolutely lusting after. But to have a 1.4 in a Leica lens was just insane at the time. And I remember buying it and just being blown away by like the quality out of it. Before that, I was shooting with like Nikon gear, and it just doesn't come close, especially the older Nikon gear that was a bit softer. I'm talking about the D800 sort of time, D700 times. It's quite a few years ago. And if you opened anything up to 1.4, and I remember I've still got it somewhere, there's an 85 1.4 that I used to shoot weddings with. And you open that to 1.4 with a little bit of distance away, and it's soft. And in contrast, this 35, I opened it up, and I have shot weddings with this lens. And it's pin sharp and beautiful, and it's got a rendering that's quite dreamy and all of that. But I think that comes back to the tools being the right ones for the right job. And this offers a particular look and a feel that is right for the type of stories that I was wanting to tell at that particular time when I first bought it.
They are very special. That lens did get me walked out of the old Leica store in New York, though, for suggesting that things occasionally had to be in focus, and they literally put their arm around my shoulder and said, well, it was lovely to see you. They were I tried it out and was talking to them, and I think at that point they decided, well, he's not going to buy this lens because he's decided 1.4 is too wide open. Because there's a danger, I think, when you get those lenses that you end up like focused on an eyelash, and that you think that you're creating art. And then I did that at Wetzlar. I shot a Q2 wide open for an afternoon and ate cake and drank coffee and thought this was amazing. And then when I look back at the images, like I was just isolating a blade of grass against the background. That's all I'd done. I did not actually, but that's in a very artificial setting. When you're actually doing something and you have ideas whilst you're out there. I think that's the thing for me about those lenses and the M system in general, is that like you've got all that versatility in a very small package that doesn't look imposing as well. So for the work you do on the street, presumably that helps when you're with people and stuff, that this isn't this hulking great SLR in front of people. It's quite a small, discreet thing. It's not loud.
Yeah, you don't want anything that stands out. I mean, I've had people come up to me and they just assume it's an old film camera and I can't be doing anything serious, which is exactly where I'm pitching myself at. And if anything, I want to look the fool on the street, because then people aren't thinking I'm going to be doing anything with any images or it's going to have any sort of relevance anywhere. Let alone it's going to be maybe made into a print or put on a website. But to be able to obviously use these beautiful lenses and photograph things and know that you can make images that you can, if you really wanted to, blow up to A2 or A1, and it's going to have all that rich, beautiful detail in it, then you're laughing, aren't you? Because you've effectively snuck in, shot, and got out of there without anyone knowing. That makes me sound really creepy, doesn't it? I am quite creepy. I will put my hand up. I'm creepy down the seafront.
It's street photography. It's if you're doing that sort of documentary photography, I think it's why I'll never be very good at it, because I think I worry too much. I'm overthinking, and then I've missed the shot. I missed one recently of police people in London. It was a van filled with police officers, all bored near London Bridge, like clearly waiting for something, but they've got to sit there in like a riot van and wait for it. And they're all leaning against the window, like hands in their faces in their hands, just looking bored. And then on the side of the van, it says, "We're recruiting." And I should have taken that shot. I just chickened out because it's a van full of police officers. And it's just like, and Matthias made fun of me for it. It was just like, you should have just done it. And it's learning. You have to miss them as well. You have to miss them. I think you have to have that experience of like the pangs of regret. But now, 3-4 weeks later, I'm still thinking about how I just should have, because what would they have done? They were worst thing. They'd say, "Can you delete it?"
I mean, why? I mean, they've got cameras on them recording.
Well, exactly. You. Yeah. I'm not confrontational enough.
I don't think many street photographers are. There's the odd ones, obviously, that I know that are a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive because that's the wrong word, but assertive, shall we say, on the street.
Yeah.
And then there's those that are quite passive. And I think there's like a middle ground where you can sort of have the confidence to be able to shoot and back up what you're doing by, obviously, if someone confronted you, you'd be able to talk to them, which I tend to, that's my defense if anyone does ask. I talk them to death about photography.
Excellent.
You can see them going, "Oh shit, it's a nutcase. We need to get away. We shouldn't have asked him."
So if I just hand out like cards for the podcast, I was actually, I'm just, and there we go, and then that would scare them off.
Yeah, they would run in the. As soon as you start talking passionately about something and they're not interested, you can see the glazed look on their face. I mean, I've learned now to shut up after a while. But if I've had a few drinks and there's someone that I feel is receptive, I will probably talk their ears off. So
yeah, I've not learned that trick for sure.
No.
So because you bought that lens, then paired it with an M6. What's your split between film and digital like these days? Because you've got what, 3 bodies? Do you?
I've got, how many have I got? 3 M bodies, yeah.
Yes,
currently. I mean, it keeps rotating and changing.
Sure.
So now, I mean, just because of timing, cost of film, cost of processing, the fact that you can't actually print, I don't have access to a darkroom anymore. So predominantly most of my work is digital now. and I use film more as a treat. So if I'm going away, if I'm going, which I am in the next few weeks, I'm going down to Cornwall, back down to St Ives again, and I will take. I shoot them an M6 over one shoulder. I've got an M11 over the other, and I'll just swap and change because it's more of a treat now as opposed to what it was years ago. I remember I went and shot New York the first time I went there, and I shot near enough everything on my M6. This was back when film was so cheap that I was shooting pretty much a roll a block, and he was walking like it was digital, but it didn't matter because I was shooting a lot of black and white at the time, so it was like £1.50 a roll. So it really didn't matter. I mean, it was like I don't think I'm going to get back to New York anytime soon, so let's just throw some money at this and have some fun. And I did it, and it was fun. And I mean, truth be told, there's 2 rolls in the drawer behind me here that are still undeveloped from 2008.
Wow.
Yeah, I should have developed those a long time ago, but never mind. I've still got there's loads and loads of other film, and it's one that was there was 2 that was a bit more experimental, and chances are there's nothing on it of any use anyway. And back then, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just happy snapping and having fun. But yeah, so the split's a lot more different these days compared to what it used to be. It doesn't stop me aching for that tactile nature of like film photography. That's probably why a lot of the images that I produce are knocking on the door of the film aesthetic. I like the tonality, I like the rich colors and how things feel, and I think that's like one of the most important things. Like your first bite into a photograph, a color photograph, is the color. So you really need to make that count before you like look at anything else. And if you've just got this cold disposable digital picture that everyone can produce now, you're just going to pass that by. And I think it's almost like that first whiff, like you smell the food before you see it. And you see the color before you see what the photo was. Like in the milliseconds that you look at the picture, it's the color that's going to jump out of you and inform how you feel about it. And then the overlay of what the actual image is of. And if I've got something that's beautifully pastel, it gives you a certain mood and feel to it. Whereas if it's digital colors that you've seen a million times before, and especially in today's society where you skim past God knows how many on Instagram every day, you need to have, I feel like I need to have something that's got something that's a little bit deeper than that. I can skim over it kind of thing. So leaning into that is a massive thing for me. So the film aesthetic runs deep, but unfortunately I can't really back it up with time, money. I don't want to say effort because there's still a lot of effort there, but I wish I still
I'm not patient enough. I'm not patient enough for film anymore. Instant film, yes. Polaroids, amazing. I mean, even the 15 minutes you end up waiting for a Polaroid before it even looks half like it's going to look, and then basically waiting 24 hours before it's kind of set and before the colors, like stuff I shot last week in Crete looks so much better today now that I've just kept it in a box for like a week and scanned it later. It just, and I think the patience aspect for me is gone. But I came up, although I shot film growing up, I came up through digital. I fell in love with photography properly when I had like a D40. That was my first SLR, and was like, here we go. Oh, you've got some Polaroids. Look at that.
I wasn't ignoring you. I was literally.
I didn't know.
Fishing
you were
through the drawer. So for my wedding, I got married last year. My brother-in-law bought me and Jem a Polaroid camera. So we had that floating around at the wedding, and here there's a load of the wedding pictures that were shot on Polaroid. A lot of the wedding was actually shot on film. The photographer, I requested that she did basically go and do her own thing. Like I love her work, and I'll send you her details after this. It's fantastic. And she was running around. I said, shoot as you would do naturally. Don't worry about doing anything else. Just
Mm.
shoot film. And she turned up and she
Yeah.
had this bag full of cameras. She had like a Hasselblad 500 cm,
Oh, wow.
an M6, a Contax, yeah, everything just rattling
Yeah.
around in this this bag. Like, no, it was literally just a what they called not a satchel bag. You know, what's it? A tote bag.
Oh, right. Wow.
She just literally a tote bag with all these cameras rattling around inside it. Just,
Yeah.
you know.
Amazing.
So she turned up with that and she shot the wedding. It was fantastic. Absolutely loving it. And the images that came back. In fact, I'm just getting one blown up. I've sent it off today, which is going to go up on the bedroom wall, which is just a beautiful moment. And she shot it on her M6, and it's just of the sunset over the studio where we got married, and it's beautiful. There's a fire pit in the foreground, and me and Jem in the background wandering off. It's beautiful. But anyway, here's so this is probably one of my favorite Polaroids. Unfortunately, obviously, people can't see this, but
Sure.
yeah, this is for the listeners' benefit. Me and Jem on our wedding day, and my friend Dean Scott literally jumped in front of us with the camera. He just picked it up and shot this picture, and then he went and hid it. Well, he didn't hid it; he just placed it next to where all the cards and presents were as like a little memento. And we found it the next day, and we were just like, "Oh, this is just a beautiful moment." And that's the benefit of obviously having a lot of photography friends, that they can, and they did, pick up all my cameras and run off and shoot with them all day.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. I mean, it's a brave person who leaves, their Leica lying around for people
Yeah,
to
it
potentially.
was literally a bag full of Leicas. And I went to go get one because I was very aware I didn't want to be that guy at the wedding. I mean, I was the guy with the camera around my neck still. And I was wondering, I went back to go rifle through my bag to pick my M6 out, and everything had gone. And I looked around, and all my friends have got the camera, and they're just shooting. And you know what? They produce some amazing work, and and now they're just like, "There's your cameras back, Dan," or I just grab them off them during the day. So really,
That's
really
cool.
nice. And then here's the latest Polaroid that we've just had done while we was in Japan. So it's me and Jem again. And unfortunately, I know people can't see this, but imagine a nice, beautifully lit portrait on a sunny day in Osaka.
Yeah.
With a beautiful blue sky behind us.
Very nice.
And we bumped into this guy who I assumed to begin with was trying to sell us pictures.
Right.
He had a Hasselblad, and I was like, no, he doesn't seem like the type to be selling pictures. And he had the Polaroid back on it.
Yeah.
And then through trying to translate, it was sort of like, yeah, okay, you'll take a picture for us. And he was just basically doing it for fun and giving away the pictures. So I took a photo of him with my camera, and he took two. So he took one and he put it on his Instagram feed. And he gave us the other one. So we've got this nice little Polaroid from Japan, me and Jem.
That's so cool. It looked like an amazing trip. You've been posting like the odd bit here and there. Like, how long were you out there for?
We did 2 weeks solid. We did like the travel days at either side, so we didn't have to like interrupt the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Started in Tokyo, moved across to Osaka, up to Kyoto, back to Tokyo over 2 weeks, and it was amazing. The only downside was because it was actually our honeymoon, and I say like downside from a photography point of view. I kept having to remind myself, this isn't a photo holiday. This is our honeymoon. And I caught myself a couple of times where I was like, I'm just going to wander off, and I need to stop wandering off, because I know what I'm like. I'd disappear for 2-3 hours, and so I had to stop. So
Well, no, that's good. That sounds great. That sounds like you had the wherewithal to stop yourself from potentially like ruining it or doing something you regret. That sounds great. What an amazing trip. Had you been to Japan before?
Never been, and that's the furthest that we've traveled as well. So it was.
Oh, wow.
We really wanted to do something that was going to push the boundaries a little bit, and felt so different. And you know what? I was expecting it to be a lot more uncomfortable, and I think I was going to be out of my depth a lot more once I was there. And I wasn't. I just turned up, and I was like, oh, this is very organized. It's very nice. Everything just makes sense, even though it's a completely different language, and I'm dyslexic. I can't read most things anyway. But to see letters that don't even represent the alphabet that I know,
Yeah.
I was just like, this is just completely alien. But part of me was just like, well, I wouldn't read a sign anyway. So here's
Yeah.
a sign that no one can, well, Jem couldn't read either. I was like, welcome to my world. We'll just navigate the way I normally navigate. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. And
Just
you know
figure
what?
it
It
out.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. Has
Yeah.
that inspired in you like maybe a bit of travel photography? Like would that be a future project maybe to do stuff in like places that are less familiar?
I mean, I do. Like anywhere I go, I photograph
Mm.
anyway. I think as all of us do.
Mm.
I don't know what it would look like because I shoot each place as I arrive. I produced a series in Greece last year, and that was really nice to shoot, but I don't think it fits with anything that I've shot in Japan or anything of any other
Mm.
places that I've been. Like, went to Amsterdam recently as well, which actually I had an issue with the camera and ended up not having a working light meter in my M11. So
Right.
I had to shoot it pretty much like it was an M3. No
Right.
light meter,
Yeah.
guess the exposure, hope for the best. So, but I think each place I approach you in quite a unique kind of way.
Mm.
So I don't think anything would kind of fit in, but I will
Yeah.
just shoot it anyway and see what happens. And if there's a
Yeah.
series at the end of it, good
Yeah,
times.
then so be it. Well, your second of your three lenses, the two that are left, are very good for travel because they're so conveniently they're so pocketable. So which of the two remaining 35s is your second?
Second choice, drum roll please,
Mhm.
is the 35 Summicron spherical.
Ah, the
So
newer
that's
of the two then.
so this is the it's an f2 lens. It's a bit smaller than the Summilux. It's
Mm.
still pin sharp, but it's just without that extra stop of 1.4. It's got a plastic hood on it, so when you take that off, it's this diddy little lens. I mean, it's still got a bit of weight to it, but
Yeah.
it's beautiful because I'm not going to be shooting around. I mean, I used to shoot everything, try and get it at 1.4, and then I realised that was just futile. Trying to shoot street like that before anyone had told me. It took me years to
Yeah.
figure that out, by the way.
Right. Yeah, yeah. You're zone focusing to like 2 inches. You've got 2 inches to play with. You've got to get
I
it
was
perfect.
trying to critically focus while people are
Yeah.
walking away or towards me. Yeah. Why can't I focus this? I
It's
don't know.
weird.
Yeah.
Other people seem to do it, and then you
Yeah.
look at their photos and you go, "Oh wait, stuff is in focus a bit in the background as well. Maybe they're
Mm,
not shooting at 1.4."
yeah. It took me a while to figure that out. It's quite
You and me
embarrassing, but
both. You and
yeah.
me both, mate. And like, I'm a very recent convert to f8 and B there. Like looking
Mm,
back at old photos, why did I love my GR3 photos so much? Well, because sometimes in rapid moments to compensate for light, I would just crank up or like close down the aperture, and then suddenly those it makes those photos look it makes most cameras look amazing in a way that they haven't earned if you
yeah.
shoot at a kind of higher aperture. You kind of like I think that's the thing I learned from that recently. So yeah, no, you do right, but yeah, I'm a fan of the Summicron. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's the only thing that would potentially. I'm scared to try one because I
Mm.
love my Zeiss 35 so much
No,
that
I
I'm
mean, I
fearful.
get that. I get that. But it's a beautiful lens. This
Mm,
is it's only because I've bought into the Leica ecosystem so
yeah.
much that I've shot with the Summilux at 1.4. I don't really use 1.4 unless it's at night, but now with the
Mm,
ISO ranges, that doesn't really matter unless you're going for the look of shooting wider open, but I
mm,
very rarely touch that. I think you get to a point where that becomes a bit of a crutch where
mm.
you are relying on a depth of field to save the photograph.
Yeah.
And we've all been there and done it, and I've done it for years. And then you get beyond that, and then it's more about, well, I want to compose everything in that frame to be able to fit in and slot together. So I'm going
Yeah.
to be shooting, and I mostly shoot things at 5.6. So the weight saving and
Yeah.
size, if you're carrying a camera around your neck, which I do, I carry it around my neck, and you're carrying it around for 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
walking the streets of whichever country you're in while you're
Yeah.
traveling, you've got that around your neck. So the weight saving, yeah, my neck, my back thanked me.
Yes, exactly. Did you notice a big difference when you went from the M10 to the M11 as well? Because you've got the
Huge.
black.
I
It's
didn't think
big,
I
isn't
would
it?
like it. I didn't because
Yeah.
it's obviously a lot lighter. I thought, again, a little bit of a purist within me is like, oh, it's lost the base plate.
Yeah.
And this is like obviously nerdy stuff that doesn't really matter, but there's still a part of me that goes, I want to shoot it a certain way, and that makes me feel happy. And if I'm happy, then I'm going to hopefully produce better work.
Yeah.
But then after using it for a while, I then went, oh my God, I can carry this and my neck, it feels my back, my shoulders, but it's
Yeah.
weird because it's just body position. But if you're more comfortable on the street, which I am if I've got a
Mm.
lighter camera around my neck, I mean, it's still hefty and I feel like I'm holding something of substance, which is
Mm.
also important because I've shot with cameras before where I felt like it's a bit plasticky, and if I take the shot, I might break it, or if I knock into
Yeah.
something, I need something that just feels like when I take the picture, it's got it. And I think like
Yeah.
the M10, the 11, the M6, it feels almost like I've got a German rifle and
Yeah.
I'm
But
loading it.
it's also, it stabilizes it, I think, because when you're shooting, I noticed this coming from like using the GR3 and the A7 a lot to then
Mm,
coming to the M. But the 20%, it's like it made a huge difference. You're absolutely right, like, especially when you're putting heavier lenses on. Like it overcomes the difference almost between a Summilux and a Summicron, in weight saving of like 20%. Also, for me, USB-C charging is huge. I just can't.
yeah,
That's great. I don't have to travel with an extra brick. I traveled last week to Crete with one 2-port USB-C brick that I
yeah,
just plugged in, and everything just used a USB-C cable of one sort or another, like phone, watch, laptop, camera, both cameras, Polaroid as well, all just USB-C charging. And it was just great. That's huge.
yeah. It really is. I think we forget. Do you know what? We had that. We had that back in the day. It
Mm.
was film. We didn't need to
Yes.
charge anything. We just took
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
camera, and then if you really wanted to, you would take a spare watch battery.
Yes. For
But
your
even
light
if
meter,
you
just in
didn't, it'd be
case.
fine. You just
Yeah.
guess, or you'd work out your exposure. You'd know. But
Yeah.
yeah, the like one. I mean, I got all the way to Budapest a couple of years ago, and I thought I'd. This is why I was using my M10. I thought I'd
Mm.
forgot my charging brick,
Yep.
and I think I had two spare batteries for a week. And I mean, the M10 eats batteries, so I'd have
Mm.
done those in
Yeah.
a day. I wasn't a happy. I mean, you'd ask Jem. She
No.
knew I was not happy because I thought I'd forgot it. And there's no shop or anything there where I could go and borrow one.
No.
Luckily, I hadn't. I had just literally packed it in a completely stupid place in my suitcase, and then
When did you
found it.
find it?
Yeah, I found it like after I'd raked everything out and gone
Oh,
past it, and then putting everything back in after being grumpy like a bear with a sore head, and then oh, it's here. It's fine.
yeah. There's nothing more humbling than the climb down from like impotent rage is the best rage, where you're just like, oh no, wait, actually, it was completely unnecessary. I've got the wrong end of the stick, totally.
Yeah.
Um,
But
I had a
those
heart
days are gone
sink.
now. So we
Yeah,
USB-C. Everyone's there's a charger everywhere, so good times.
there is. No, you're right. I had a similar moment this trip where I was getting photos off the card from the previous day, and then my workflow, and I was absent-minded, they pulled a couple of photos off that somebody wanted because I'd taken photos of them and their partner at this thing, and I was all ready to set, and then wiped the memory card, and then was like, oh, and that sick pit of stomach feeling when you realize, but there was the other couple that we met earlier in the day, but the internal storage on the camera saved the day because that had every image on it. So I just went through and starred the images I wanted and then copied those over, and all of that worked exactly as it should have, and consequently I didn't lose any images. But it's just that thing of, again, a thing that most people will tell you, well, I don't need that, or I'd just shoot with two memory cards if I could. And it's like, having it internal is great. I've left the house without memory cards and just not noticed
Yeah.
until I got home. I was like, oh, that's good. We live in such a, like, we're so lucky with modern systems. So many of them have like internal storage. And GR was the same. It's great.
Yeah.
I wish to make
Yeah.
another GR.
We are definitely lucky now with everything.
Yeah. So do you have any? So you've got your images you're kind of putting up on your work in progress. Do you have any more zines or books or anything in plan, or is this year's project? We're back on the ice cream cones. We're back on Dan's back on the beach.
Do you know what? I've got so many little bits and pieces that I've started. I'm the worst for it because I love sitting down and editing and processing images and things like that, it's quite therapeutic for me. But to sit down and put a book together or a zine or something like that, I find it so painstaking. Not the sequencing. I quite enjoy that, and I've got to a point where I know how I want things to flow and look and everything else, and I can be quite critical when that image is as nice as it is, or as much as I like it, doesn't fit with the narrative of what I'm trying to do here, and I will call stuff, and I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
What I find is if I'm putting something together and it needs to be in InDesign and lining everything up and everything like that, and I am just not that. I can't. I don't know what it is. I just struggle with it so much, and it bores me so much. And I know there's people out there that just go, "But Dan, it's," and I've talked to them. Dan, it's so simple. You just do this, whatever you do. I've got a template for, and you can use it. It's foolproof.
Okay.
I still worry, and then that gives me like anxiety about putting it together and everything else. And so I've got 2 or 3 projects that are at the stage of I've literally put them in a like a book template online where you can flick through, and I've got a video. I was showing some friends recently of the actual book of something I produced while I was in New York, and I haven't released any of the work yet because it's supposed to be going out into like a little zine.
Oh, nice.
And it's just sat there, and I need to get it out. So if there is anyone that's listening and that can help me basically just take this off my hands and put it together and do an amazing job.
Well, I
yes,
think
I will pay you.
I think that's what you need sometimes, because I think these days, years and years ago, I met a MotoGP photographer who'd started in film and then he'd gone into digital stuff. And his whole thing was like, for the longest time, like the Magnum photographers we were talking about at the beginning with like the contact sheets and stuff, you would give your bag of film to someone else and they would tell you what you got in the first instance. And maybe you would have a back and forth and maybe you would debate it with them, but you had that editor who was going to be a part of the process. You would always have a couple of collaborators with you who'd be looking at it with you and now I think it's kind of a cost saving and a capability thing. Like if you shoot, say, sports or whatever, or events where they're very time focused, that same one person is riding around the track on a scooter, getting the photos, coming back, editing them, providing, curating that set, providing the best set to the press guy so they've got something 20 minutes after the race finished. And they're responsible for all of that. And then maybe also, so you're kind of taking on this extra job of kind of pulling together the book and things because the tool that's in front of you, your computer, allows you to do all of these things in one device. It's sort of incredible, really. It's like this greatest invention of humanity, is like this machine that can turn its hand to being lots of different things for all at once. But it makes us think that we have to do all the bits of it. And I think that's the kind of the thing we mustn't forget, is that you're not necessarily the best. Some people will be very annoying, Dan. They'll be good at putting together books as well as good at making images. And they're probably lovely and great at cooking as well. It's a right pain in the ass. But those of us that are forced to talk about it, for example, or whatever, like, I feel like that's the thing we need to find. So yeah, call to arms for people who are like, I love laying out books, but I don't like taking photos. Like, can we bring those people together? Like, we need to find, and they, like in the village, there's a little pin board and it's like wanted, someone for cats. Like, we just need that, but for creative jobs.
That's
don't know how we do that. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's something online like Instagram where we can ask these questions, perhaps.
Yeah. If you posted an Instagram story right now, you'd be inundated with with very capable people who could help you out.
There we go. But then I don't want to I feel like I'm taking advantage. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be that guy.
Well, you could always say thank you with money. That's the thing.
I mean, that's. But then also, I know that I'm a pain in the ass client because I will be like very particular about what I'm after. When you know what you want, but you don't have the skill set to be able to produce what you want, and I could tell you exactly what it is. I can tell you where you've gone wrong, and that's probably more infuriating as a creative, because I know what it'd be like if someone did that to me. In fact, I've had it done to me several. I work professionally, so I have people telling me all the time, that's not quite right. Clients on your shoulder. I don't like it like that. That's not quite exactly. Okay. And you just smile and wave. Smile and wave. Yes, of course, we can make that amazing for you.
Yeah. I can make the logo bigger. That's no problem at all. I have a friend who he's a designer in mostly web stuff. I think he's done print, I think, and app design stuff. He does a little comic strip called Design Thinking. which for people listening, they should definitely go and have a look at. It's great. And it's mostly the kind of like the terrible experiences he's had as a creative in the 21st century, sort of drawn for all to see. And it's a lot of like people staring over your shoulder and going, yeah, just can you make that bigger? And can the icon be a cornflower blue? But yeah, well, on the subject, I guess, of like a very particular thing and being very particular, you now need to sort of round us out on your 3 lenses by justifying why you would have 2 copies of the same lens, sort of, with your last Summicron, with your V4.
Maybe I'm a little bit nutty, but yeah, I do have. Here's the third and final choice. So it's the V4 Summicron. So it's the exact same, but it's the previous version to the one that I've got, or I mentioned before. So this one's the pre-spherical version.
Yeah.
So optically, it's not as precise as the as the spherical version. I mean, this is proper nerdy kind of stuff now.
Yeah, I love it. This is why I started this thing, was so I can talk to people about like these 2 things are almost identical, but the important word is almost.
You know what? The thing is, I tell people this is just not important, but I think it gets to a point where you need to put the time and effort into the craft about what you're producing, and then you can figure out the other part afterwards. And I think this is, I've obviously got to a point now where I'm like, I think I want to dive into 35s a little bit more. So here's a suite of 35s. So yeah, this one, it's all about the character for me. And I'm, as much as I love a nice crisp image, and obviously the 35 Sumo Lux, the 1.4 will do that, and it is optically beautiful and it renders amazingly and everything else, blah blah blah, and everything you see on Instagram ever is beautiful and crisp and sharp, and it's just boring. There's nothing there. I mean, yeah, sometimes that's what you want, and it depends what type of work you're producing. And if I was photographing for a client, for example, I would be picking up the perfectly sharp images, lenses that are going to render perfectly sharp, because that's what people want to see in industry. But I'm not shooting for industry. I'm shooting for me when I'm using these lenses. So the 35 version 4, the Summicron, has this, it's soft yet sharp. It's textured yet it's not clinical, but it's got there's a substance to it. It's hard to sort of describe. And when you see it, you go, oh, it's just a little bit, it's that little knock in the right direction that I absolutely love from it. And when I started like figuring out that this was kind of the look that I wanted to go for, through obviously years of producing the work that I was making, I was constantly looking at ways to soften the images down a little bit, so you didn't have this harsh, sharp, clinical digital edge to it. And you can do so much through editing, but then there's some things that are just absolutely baked into the lens choice that you have. And very much like a lot of like cinematographers, some of them will choose the lenses that are from years gone by because it has a certain characteristic to it, and it makes you feel something slightly differently. And I'm not talking, I don't want to be looking at images where it looks like I put a pro mist filter on the front and everything's soft and smushy and blurry. That just looks horrible. I think there's definitely a balance between having something that's got character and then making something that just looks like a visual mess. And this is just, it's that little knock in the right direction. But I think that's everything that I try to produce, is those little 5% that end up stacking up. So the color, the tonality, the rendering, the sharpness, the way that things fall off, the color saturation through the lens choice as well, because this obviously has an effect on it. I mean, you can change some of this in post-production, but I don't want to be spending an hour diving into exactly tweaking the green and the purple channel and the tone curve to make it exactly where I want it. I want the lens to do the work for me to get it to the point that I was originally after, and this delivers what I'm after. And yeah, the images aren't pin sharp and precise, but they've got this characterful play to them that it says more about the type of image that I would like to make, and it leans in the right direction for the work that I'm excited about making. So I ended up buying another 35mm lens, and I've pretty much been shooting with that since I got it, and I got it about a year and a half ago. So everything I shot last year, which is as part of my series online, which is called 40 Days, all of that stuff, if you want to have a look, is on my website now, and that was all shot with that 35 version 4. So maybe you can tell, maybe you can't. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there is a bit of a nerd within me that goes, "Oh yeah, it just renders a little bit nicer. It renders this way, and it does this with the highlights, does that with the shadows." And yeah, nerdy stuff. But it's something that I think I've gone into and come out the other side of, and I really enjoy the choice that I've made with it. Plus, it's a lot smaller and it's a lot lighter. So it's the smallest and lightest lens that I actually own. It's even smaller than my 28 Elmerit. So,
is it? Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a good point of comparison.
Tiny. When you take the lens hood off, I'll show you. Obviously, you guys at home can't see this, but that is one tiny little lens. Let me take the cap off the back.
Yeah, it's just, there's nothing to it, is it? It's brilliant.
Yeah,
I love it. It's got that really nice Leica focus tab as well.
Yeah. I can't. I've got to have a tab. I can't focus with that because a lot of the time I'm focusing with. It's like like muscle memory. You know where your finger needs to go for the distance away, and you start to learn that. I mean, after years and years and years of shooting with a 35, or particularly like this for an entire summer, you figure out whereabouts. How your hand, it's almost like, I presume, playing an instrument. Not that I really play many instruments, but you figure out like where you need to be in the focus throw for a particular distance, and you can pretty much get the focus within a foot or so. And if you're shooting it 5.6 or f8, a foot or so from 6 foot away doesn't really matter. It's going to be in focus, and then you still get a nice little bit of fall off in the background as well. So
no, it's still very usable, isn't it? Yeah, it's my one. Well, I have two complaints about the Zeiss. One is the focus isn't really a focus tab; it's like a nub at the top, which, like, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
but it's not. When I use my Elmerit, I notice, I'm like, oh yeah, this is quite nice. And the lens hood is hot garbage. But I've replaced that. With an Earth one that screws on and has this nice little spinny kind of, like, it spins and makes a really satisfying noise when you screw it on, screw it off, and it's compatible with filters and stuff like that. So that's my little thing that I kind of fiddle with when I'm sort of in a car, on a train or whatever, and waiting to kind of do something. But yeah, a small 35 is your friend, whatever. But I'm gonna have to try that V4 at some point, because I feel like there's probably magic in it, and there's only so many in the world.
That's the thing. I mean, obviously it's quite a few years old now. It's been discontinued for a long time. So don't be surprised when you see the price tag. That's what I'm going to say.
Yes. And there's a bit of hype there.
There is a bit of hype, but it also depends what you're willing to sacrifice for, like the lucky one. It's not sharp. It is, but it isn't. Have a look at the work and you'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
But there is that quality to it that I absolutely love, and it renders so beautifully. I mean, it's something that I keep going back to. I mean, at the moment I'm shooting with a Summicron, my sharper lens at the moment, because I keep itching towards, I should shoot medium format, and if I just shoot at 60 megapixel and shoot at f2 on that sharp 35, because when you do crop it to like a 5.4, I think on certain situations you potentially could be hard pressed to tell the difference between maybe something that's knocking on the door of medium format or 35 mil. But there's an itch there, and I'm constantly like, oh, do I go medium format? Don't I?
Is there a Hasselblad in your future? Is this what you're telling me?
I don't bloody know, do I? I keep looking at them. I do look at, but I don't know, because then that is a completely different shooting experience. That I know that's leaning more into the portraits, which I mentioned earlier. But I think nothing quite compares to the usability and the ability to be able to shoot with the Leica system that I'm using now, and the fact that it doesn't look intimidating. I can walk along a crowded seafront and I can photograph almost on top of people, and they don't really bat an eyelid because it just looks like I'm using my granddad's camera from,
Yes.
the 1960s, and no one really cares. I mean, the odd person cares, and they do like to ask, but most people don't care. They just think I'm a weirdo. So,
Yeah, which is fine. They're only going to see you that one time. They're probably on holiday or they're visiting or just out for the day or whatever.
that's
So
it.
if you're shooting all this kind of like color stuff at the moment, you're going a little bit sharper. Do you still have your mono body, your monochrome M10?
I do. That is another beautiful camera. I tend to pull that one out. It tends to be like winter time, especially around Christmas, because I love to
Yeah,
photograph the family and friends with it.
right.
And talking about the lenses, the version 4 I put on that, and it reminds me of shooting when I first picked up my M6 and was shooting
Oh,
HP5. And I
yeah.
get, if you want to shoot black and white film, and I've still got my M6,
Mm,
just put some black and white film through that and shoot that. I get that. But now this is the thing. I can't get that developed and then go and take it into a dark room that I've got in my basement, because I don't have a
mm,
basement and I don't have a dark room. So I can't complete the process, and scanning film just isn't the same as printing it. I'm sorry, there's just
mm, mm,
nothing that comes quite as close to printing and having that magic in the darkroom when it's developing. Scanning, and you're losing so much detail and quality as well, because if you've got
mm,
this really beautifully dense neg that you can chuck some light through for a minute and expose something and have all that detail through and work it and dodging and burning in the
mm.
darkroom, you can't do that with a scanner. It just scans, and
Yeah,
then you just get, if there's too much there, not enough, you just get these dirty
too late.
looking, horrible
Yeah.
images that then you have to spend another hour in Lightroom to try and fix, and then it's never quite right. But if you'd have taken it into a darkroom, then chances are you'd got a really beautiful print out of it. So
Mm,
yeah, there's that side of things. So missing out the middleman and shoot with a monochrome um, M10, and also having that characterful lens on the front of it as well,
mm,
are definitely like a match made. They
mm.
are beautiful. So
Yeah.
definitely
Your
love that.
mono, you having a mono camera always stood out to me as like something that was unusual because your images are so. I just think of you as a color photographer. The colors are just so much part of it. But if you've got like a type of photo that this thing is just perfectly suited to, and I guess the V4 version of that lens as well is knocking back some of the extra sharpness that the monochrome sensor maybe more naturally has as well. So you're not suddenly getting something that's razor sharp when you don't want it. You kind of the ingredients you're putting together are getting you what you want.
Yeah, there's definitely that tactile edge to it that I'm looking for, and it's got that, and it delivers
Yeah,
it straight out. And you can, if you really wanted to, shoot JPEG
yeah,
and just be aware and just meter properly, shoot the JPEG, and it
mm,
comes out and it looks like the most beautiful digital film scan that you've ever done, and it
yeah,
looks nice. So why why shoot the film in the first place if you're just going to digitize it?
yeah, yeah. No, that apparently is George Lucas's point. When
Oh,
people shoot
really?
on film, he's like, "You're going to edit it digitally anyway. Like, stop kidding yourself. just
Yeah.
just shoot it digitally." Did you hear about on that subject? Because I'm kind of fascinated by this. When they made Dune, do you know about the film transfer process for
I
Dune?
do indeed, yeah.
It's
Again,
amazing,
and
isn't it?
yeah, this is the whole digital analog crossover thing really
Mm,
excites me,
yeah, yeah.
and hence with all the color stuff and everything that I'm looking for. And do you know what? I had someone say to me, "You cannot produce film-like colors with a digital camera." And this was like years ago. This was like right at the
Mm,
beginning of my color journey within photography, because
right.
I was black and white for years and years and years.
Yeah.
That's where it all began. And my whole like thing was like, I think you can. I think you can produce something that, I'm not saying it's going to be the exact copy of what the film would see, because obviously that's got so many variables depending on how you
Mm,
shot it, how you exposed it, how it was being developed, how it's
yeah.
been scanned or printed. You can get a million different results out of it. Um, but my whole idea was, if I can see that film scan on my desktop monitor and those colors are being represented there, I can tweak the colors of my digital image to give me the exact same color, because that was the argument. It was that you can't produce it digitally, but you've got the film image digitally, so why can't you?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do that. And then that led me on this journey of color.
Yeah. And now here you are taking pictures of a Helter Skelter and ice creams that are upside down.
Yeah. Just these colorful scenes and random things that happen.
I love it. Is the hot dog sign still there?
The hot dog sign is in my garage.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is.
You got it. What's their sign say now? Did they go donuts in the end?
I spoke to him over this weekend about that, because he still hasn't replaced the sign. He did say to me when he took it down that I could have it, and he gave me 2 actually. I've got 2 signs,
nice,
and they're in the garage. But he's still not replaced it. And I was speaking to him, and he was asking what he thinks, what I think what he would replace it with. And I said, well, surely it would be like either ice creams or donuts. And he's got this beautiful, it looks like a hand-painted ice cream that's on the glass of the actual ice cream shop. And I said, that would be beautiful. I mean, obviously it's an ice cream shop, and if you had, I know it said hot dogs there before, or donuts or something, but if you had a hand-painted ice cream as a sign, that'd be really nice. And I'm just saying that because I would love that, because it would fit very nicely in with the things that I'm photographing. So please do that.
Yes. Yeah. Or a sign that just says Morning Dan or something like that. Just, because that's where you start. That'd be great. Oh,
yeah.
lovely.
Or even better, one that just says smile.
Yes. Huh. There you go.
Keep everyone
interesting.
Happy.
Yeah, exactly. Keep everyone upbeat on the seafront.
Yeah.
Well, this has been brilliant. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, with the exception of confusing you at the beginning by just launching straight in. I've really enjoyed this. It's been really lovely to talk through 3. And as I say, you fully understood the assignment and played with it, which I think is excellent. You might have too many 35mm lenses in some people's eyes, but I'd say not enough.
Yeah. I mean, don't tell Jem this, because I probably would buy more.
Yeah.
I don't need them, but I would probably buy them. If I saw one, oh yeah, but that one's got a little something extra to it.
Are you tempted by a close focus? The newer ones that do the close focus?
Am I tempted? What do you think?
Sorry, it's a terrible question to ask. Yeah.
It's a stupidly absurd amount of money to be dropping on another. No, I can't.
Yes.
I need to stop thinking about it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what you need to, I mean, you don't have the Zeiss. Like you could get one. They're very cheap by comparison. Like 400 quid, something like that, will get you play with that, because that's got when you talk about texture and render and feel, like that's got a very different feel to it. It's kind of, it's funny. It's like it's modern in the middle, and old around the edge. It's not edge to edge sharp. It's not perfect, but it doesn't distort, which is interesting. If you do your Lightroom, because it's in Lightroom, and if you click the clicky magic correct button, it's the non-Leica lens that I have that is the only one I have that Leica lens doesn't need any correction.
Yeah.
There's no cushion or pinch or anything like that. It leaves it alone. The only thing it changes is it adjusts the vignetting around the edge, because it does have a kind of natural vignette around the edge, especially when it's stopped down a bit. But I like that, because I think it just has a look. It's you're using the thing in the way that it was intended. It's not, because eventually all of these lenses will be so perfect that you'll just look at the image out of them and sort of feel like, what's the point? I feel like, that happened when photography was new, apparently. It's my A level in art coming out. When we did art history, painters were very dismissive of photography early on, because their view was, why are you slavishly just recreating exactly what's in front of you? Like, what's the value? And then when darkroom techniques were being employed to kind of push and pull certain parts of the image, that painters were apparently a bit, see, told you. You can't leave it alone. Like, it's not about that. You do want to manipulate the image. You're trying to tell a story. That story is very rarely exactly what you saw. Like, unless you're reporting something and it's documentary style, it's literally,
if you're a press photographer, fair enough.
Yes.
Exactly as it was. No touching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then that has to be the case. That's why your M11P has cleverness in it, to, like, you can say, I shot this ice cream, it was real.
Do you know what? I might actually need to use that at some point, because the amount of people that don't believe me, I still get messages now. People that I don't believe these are dropped ice creams. I'm like, I'm not. Why would I? I'm not the guy that would waste an ice cream. I would eat it. I am not going to plant an ice cream on the floor. I'm 100% eating all of it. And if I dropped a bit, it would hit me on the back of the head on the way down.
Our experience of experiments a few months back with generative AI have taught us that the ice creams it draws are not realistic yet. They're not good enough. They don't look enough like the real thing. Yeah. The one of the seagull staring at the ice cream, I've still got on my desktop somewhere, with like the sea where it drew it kind of wrong, because we wanted a seagull looking at a dropped ice cream, and it kind of drew the legs of a seagull on the ball of the ice cream. It's nightmare fuel at that point.
I love it. It's a little bit abstract, isn't it? It's a little bit. Yeah. There's part of me that loves that. I want more of that. I think that sort of surrealism with him. Like, if you marry that into photography, if you do like obviously it's been done, but I'm talking like years ago now. But yeah, more abstraction. That is a huge thing for me as well. Like, if I can somehow figure out a way to get something that looks a little bit surreal or other, I don't know, not otherworldly, but you know what I mean, where there's like something where, what is that? Why is that like that? What am I looking at? Challenging like what you're photographing. So it's not just, here's a photograph of a thing. Here's a photograph, but you figure it out. Here's the pieces. You go figure that out.
Put it together. And if you and if you find something in it, then great. And if you don't, come back to the book years later and then you'll see what you've missed. I'm excited to be talking to you when you've had the idea suddenly to enter Dan enters his prog rock album cover phase. Like, I feel like that's what you've just told the world is about to happen. Like 10 years from now, I feel like we're going to find a gallery filled with very abstract images.
Not quite possibly. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Do you want to point anyone towards anything before we wrap up?
Yeah. Go have a look at. So I've got my website, danbaker.me. And then Instagram is at danbaker88. That's probably the best two places. There's other social media bits and pieces out there, but obviously that's the two that I use mainly. The website is somewhat more serious, although I am posting random bits and pieces at the moment, and I often rotate the galleries that I have on there just to keep things fresh. So check back with it. There's a blog on there as well that I should update, but it tends to be around Christmas time when I just go, here's all my family pictures, because everyone wants to see those. And then Instagram. So yeah, have a look at those and drop me a message if you want to have a chat.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much, mate. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Have a lovely rest of the evening. And we'll do this again soon. That was fun.
It was amazing.
Thank you all very 50s much. Next time. All right, fella. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.
All right. Cheers, mate.
You can rate and review this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and that'll help people to find the show. You can also sign up for a midweek newsletter that I've started doing. You can get that at ianfarrell.com/sign-up, and there is a link to it in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.